the unconquered shore Spain's triumphs of resistance. My name is Asier Goulon, and welcome. The Iberian Peninsula, this ancient land of stark mountains and sun-drenched plains, has long been a crucible of cultures, a prize coveted by empires. Its strategic position, a bridge between continents, has invited many to its shores, not always with peaceful intent. Yet Spain, a nation forged in resilience, has a remarkable history of turning the tide against seemingly insurmountable odds, its spirit an unyielding fortress against the ambitions of would-be conquerors. Across the centuries, the very landscape seems to have conspired with its people, the rugged terrain and the indomitable will of its inhabitants forming a formidable defense. We often marvel at the grand monuments and the rich tapestry of art and culture that Spain has gifted the world. But beneath this lies a bedrock of defiance, a story of survival and sovereignty fiercely protected. Hoy vamos a explorar 3 invasiones históricas que intentaron conquistar España, pero fracasaron rotundamente. These are not mere footnotes in dusty chronicles, but epic sagas of human endeavor, of strategy, courage, and sometimes the sheer caprice of fate. We shall journey back to witness the might of empires clashing against the resolve of a people determined to chart their own destiny. From the high seas to the craggy Sierras, we will uncover how Spain, on 3 momentous occasions, stared into the abyss of foreign dominion, and with extraordinary fortitude, declared, "No pasarán." The ill-fated Armada, England's unbreachable isles. The year is 1588, a time of colossal ambition and fervent belief. King Felipe II of Spain, ruler of a vast global empire upon which the sun, it was said, never set, casts his gaze northwards, towards the troublesome Protestant Isle of England. His motivations are a complex weave of religious zeal, dynastic pride, and strategic necessity. England, under Queen Elizabeth I, has become a thorn in Spain's side, supporting Dutch rebels and sanctioning privateers who prey upon Spanish treasure fleets, returning laden from the New World. For Felipe, the time has come to silence this defiant kingdom. And so, the stage is set for one of history's most audacious amphibious assaults. From the ports of Lisbon and Cadiz, a colossal fleet is assembled, a maritime behemoth christened the Grande y Felicissima Armada, the great and most fortunate navy. Over 130 ships, galleons, galleasses, and supply vessels, crewed by nearly 30,000 men, soldiers and sailors alike, prepare to sail. Their mission to rendezvous with the Duke of Parma's seasoned army in Flanders and ferry them across the narrow channel to invade England's shores. The sheer scale of this undertaking is breathtaking. Imagine the forests felled to provide timber for these mighty hulls, the foundries blazing day and night to cast the thousands of cannons, the immense logistical challenge of provisioning such a force for a prolonged campaign. This is not merely a fleet. It is a floating city, a testament to Spain's immense resources and its unwavering determination to impose its will upon the turbulent waters of European politics. The Armada is a statement of power, intended to awe and overwhelm. As this formidable force finally sets sail in May, a palpable sense of anticipation, mixed with trepidation, ripples across Europe. The winds, however, those fickle arbiters of maritime fortune, are not immediately kind. Early storms batter the fleet even before it clears Spanish waters, forcing it into La Coruña for repairs and resupply. It is an ominous portent, a whisper of the challenges that lie ahead, a reminder that even the grandest human designs are subject to the whims of the natural world. Meanwhile, England waits. Alerted to the impending threat, a smaller, more nimble English fleet, under the command of Lord Howard of Effingham, and with seasoned sea dogs like Sir Francis Drake in key roles, prepares to defend its homeland. Their ships are generally smaller, faster, and more maneuverable than the Spanish galleons, their cannons designed for longer-range engagements. They understand their home waters, the treacherous currents and shifting winds of the channel, like the backs of their hands. The Armada, upon re-emerging, sails in a distinctive crescent formation, a defensive posture designed to protect its vulnerable transport ships. As it enters the English Channel in late July, the first encounters occur. The English tactics are cautious, a series of skirmishes rather than a full-scale engagement. They harass the Spanish flanks, using their superior speed and gunnery to pick off stragglers, avoiding the close-quarters grappling and boarding actions at which the Spanish excelled. The Spanish commander, the Duke of Medina Sidonia, a nobleman of high rank but limited naval experience, struggles to maintain cohesion and bring the elusive English to a decisive battle. He adheres rigidly to his orders to conserve his fleet and press on towards the rendezvous with Parma. The English, however, are relentless, their smaller vessels darting in and out, a constant stinging irritation to the Spanish Leviathan. The critical moment arrives as the Armada anchors in the exposed roadstead of Calais. Here, they await word from Parma, whose forces are not yet ready, delayed by a Dutch blockade. It is here, under the cloak of darkness, that the English unleash their masterstroke fire ships. 8 vessels, old and packed with combustibles, are set ablaze and sent drifting towards the densely packed Spanish fleet. The psychological impact is immense. Panic ripples through the Spanish ranks. Though the material damage from the fireships themselves is minimal, the fear of conflagration and exploding gunpowder forces the Spanish captains to cut their anchors and scatter, breaking their carefully maintained defensive formation. The crescent is shattered. This is the opportunity the English have been waiting for, a chance to engage the disorganized Spanish ships on more favorable terms. The ensuing Battle of Gravelines, fought on the 8th of August, is a turning point. The English ships, with the weather gauge in their favor, close in, their cannons wreaking havoc on the more cumbersome Spanish galleons. The Spanish fight with customary bravery, their soldiers lining the decks, ready to repel boarders who never quite come within reach. But their own heavier cannons are slower to reload, and their tactics are ill-suited to this new form of naval warfare. Several Spanish ships are badly damaged, some sunk, others driven aground. Though not an outright annihilation, Gravelines is a clear English victory. More significantly, it shatters any remaining hope of the Armada linking up with Parma's army. The prevailing southwesterly winds, which had initially favored the Armada's passage up the Channel, now become its jailer, preventing any return south. With the invasion plan in tatters and the English fleet still a threat, Medina Sidonia makes the fateful decision to return to Spain by sailing north, circumnavigating Scotland and Ireland. This perilous voyage, through unfamiliar and treacherous waters, proves to be even more devastating than the English cannons. The North Atlantic in late summer is a harsh and unforgiving environment for ships already battered by combat and running low on supplies. Ferocious gales, what the Spanish survivors would later call the Protestant winds, smash into the retreating fleet. Ships are driven onto the rocky coasts of Scotland and Ireland, their timbers splintered, their crews facing a desperate struggle for survival in hostile lands. Thousands perish from drowning, starvation, disease, or at the hands of locals. The unforgiving ocean claims what the English could not. Of the grand fleet that set out with such pomp and confidence, fewer than half the ships eventually straggle back to Spanish ports, their crews decimated, their mission an unmitigated disaster. The defeat of the Armada is a profound blow to Spanish prestige and a significant moment in the shifting balance of power in Europe. It marks not the end of Spain's naval strength, but a clear demonstration of its limits, and a testament to England's burgeoning maritime prowess and the formidable power of the ocean itself. The Spanish ulcer Napoleon's peninsular quagmire, the dawn of the 19th century. Europe trembles before the might of Napoleon Bonaparte. His Grande Armée, a seemingly invincible force, has redrawn the map of the continent, its eagles soaring over conquered capitals. Spain, initially an uneasy ally of France, soon finds itself a target of Napoleon's insatiable ambition. In 1807 and 1808, under the pretext of invading Portugal, French troops pour across the Pyrenees, their presence quickly revealing a more sinister design: the complete subjugation of the Iberian Peninsula. Napoleon, a master strategist, perhaps fatally underestimated the Spanish character. He believed the country, beset by internal political strife and a weakened monarchy, would be an easy conquest. He forced the abdication of King Charles IV and his son Ferdinand VII, installing his own brother, Joseph Bonaparte, on the Spanish throne. It was a move of audacious arrogance, one that would ignite a firestorm of resistance across the land. The spark ignites in Madrid on the 2nd of May, 1808, the Dos de Mayo. The ordinary citizens of the capital, armed with little more than kitchen knives and desperate courage, rise up against Marshal Murat's occupying forces. The reprisal is brutal, immortalized in Goya's haunting canvases. But the message is clear: Spain will not yield passively. This spontaneous outburst of defiance echoes throughout the provinces, transforming into a nationwide insurrection. What Napoleon anticipated as a swift military occupation devolves into a protracted and savage conflict, a people's war. This is the birth of guerrilla warfare on a scale never before witnessed. Small, irregular bands of fighters, guerrilleros, emerge from the mountains and countryside. They harass French supply lines, ambush patrols, and exact a terrible toll on the occupiers, melting back into the populace before retribution can fall. The very landscape of Spain, with its rugged sierras and sparse communication routes, becomes their ally. The French, accustomed to decisive pitched battles against conventional armies, find themselves mired in a bewildering and brutalizing conflict. Every village could hide an enemy, every peasant could be a combatant. The Spanish ulcer, as Napoleon himself would later call it, begins to bleed his empire, diverting hundreds of thousands of valuable troops and vast resources that were desperately needed on other fronts. The nature of this war is one of extraordinary ferocity. Sieges of cities like Zaragoza and Girona become legendary for their heroic and desperate defense. Ordinary men and women, priests and nobles, fight side by side, enduring starvation, bombardment and disease, inflicting horrific casualties on the besiegers and inspiring resistance far beyond their walls. These are not mere military engagements. They are struggles for the very soul of the nation. The Spanish regular army, though often outmaneuvered and defeated in open battle by the seasoned French legions, continues to fight, reforming and regrouping. Moreover, Britain, seeing an opportunity to bleed Napoleon, lands an expeditionary force in Portugal under Sir Arthur Wellesley, later the Duke of Wellington. The Anglo-Portuguese army, in conjunction with Spanish forces, begins to contest French control, leading to a series of major campaigns. The Peninsular War, as it becomes known, is a complex tapestry of conventional battles, grueling sieges, and the ever-present gnawing threat of the guerrillas. It is a war of attrition, fought with a savagery that shocks even hardened veterans. No quarter is often given, and atrocities are committed by all sides, fueled by hatred and the desperation of a life-and-death struggle. The fabric of Spanish society is torn asunder. Joseph Bonaparte, the reluctant king, finds his throne resting on a bed of bayonets. He struggles to win the hearts and minds of a people who view him as a foreign usurper. His attempts at reform and modernization are largely ignored or actively resisted. He is a monarch in name only, his authority barely extending beyond the reach of French military patrols. Madrid may be occupied, but Spain itself remains unconquered. Napoleon, distracted by his vast continental ambitions, particularly the looming invasion of Russia, can never fully commit the overwhelming force needed to crush the Spanish resistance entirely. He pours men and materiel into the peninsula, but it is like pouring water into sand. The guerrillas, the juntas organizing resistance, and the allied armies ensure that the French are constantly under pressure, unable to consolidate their control. The tide begins to turn decisively with Wellington's victories, such as Salamanca in 1812. As Napoleon's empire begins to crumble elsewhere, particularly after the disastrous Russian campaign, the French position in Spain becomes increasingly untenable. The Spanish ulcer has festered for too long, draining vital strength from the imperial core. Slowly, painstakingly, the French are pushed back towards the Pyrenees. The war has devastated Spain, leaving a legacy of bitterness and economic ruin, but it has also forged a renewed sense of national identity and demonstrated the incredible power of popular resistance against a seemingly invincible military machine. The invaders, who arrived with such confidence, are forced into a humiliating retreat. By 1814, the last French troops are expelled from Spanish soil. Napoleon's attempt to absorb Spain into his empire has ended in a catastrophic failure. He had sought to impose his will, but instead he awakened a slumbering giant of national spirit. The Peninsular War stands as a stark testament to the limits of military power when confronted by the unbreakable will of a people fighting for their freedom and their land. The cost is immense, the scars deep, but Spain has said no. The mountains and plains that witnessed such bloodshed would remember the echoes of this ferocious struggle, a reminder that the spirit of a nation, once roused, can prove to be an adversary more formidable than any army, however grand or disciplined. The peninsula had become a graveyard for French ambitions. Chapter 3. Our story now takes us further back, to the early 8th century, a pivotal moment when the Iberian Peninsula stood at a crossroads of civilizations. The Visigothic kingdom, which had ruled for centuries, is internally fractured, weakened by dynastic squabbles and social unrest. It is a kingdom ripe for change, though few could have foreseen the cataclysmic nature of the transformation about to unfold. In the year 711, a formidable force, primarily composed of Berber warriors from North Africa, under the command of Tariq ibn Ziyad, crosses the narrow straits that would one day bear his name, Gibraltar, the Mountain of Tariq. Their initial landing is not perhaps intended as a full-scale conquest, but the swift and decisive victory at the Battle of Guadalete over the Visigothic king Roderick opens the floodgates. The Visigothic military structure crumbles with astonishing speed. City after city falls to the advancing Muslim armies, often with minimal resistance, sometimes even aided by disaffected elements within the Visigothic society itself. Within a few short years, the vast majority of the Iberian Peninsula is under the control of the Umayyad Caliphate. A new epoch dawns. Al-Andalus is born. This new realm becomes a vibrant center of culture, science, and art. A beacon of learning in a Europe largely mired in the Dark Ages. Cities like Cordoba, Seville, and Granada will flourish, boasting magnificent mosques, palaces, libraries, and public baths. Scholars of diverse faiths will contribute to an extraordinary intellectual ferment. This is not a simple tale of conquest, but also of complex cultural exchange and societal transformation. However, the ambition of the conquerors was to subdue the entirety of the peninsula, to bring all its lands and peoples under the banner of Islam. And it is here, in this grand design, that we find the seeds of a failed aspect of the invasion. While the southern and central regions are swiftly incorporated, the northernmost fringes, the rugged mountainous territories of Asturias and Cantabria, prove a far tougher proposition. Here, amidst the formidable peaks of the Picos de Europa, a hardy independent people, remnants of the Visigothic nobility and indigenous Asturians and Cantabrians, refuse to yield. The terrain itself, a natural fortress of steep valleys and dense forests, is ill-suited to the cavalry tactics that served the invaders so well on the open plains further south. This is a different kind of battleground, demanding a different kind of resilience. Around the year 718 or 722, the exact date shrouded in the mists of legend, a Visigothic nobleman named Pelayo is said to have rallied a small band of warriors. At a place called Covadonga, a narrow valley overshadowed by towering cliffs, this diminutive force confronts a much larger Muslim expedition sent to pacify the rebellious region. The details of the battle are debated by historians, embellished by myth, yet its significance resonates through the centuries. Against the odds, Pelayo's men achieve a remarkable victory. Whether a major military engagement or a smaller, though symbolically crucial, skirmish, Covadonga marks a turning point. It demonstrates that resistance is possible, that the seemingly inexorable tide of conquest can be checked. It is the first ember of what will, over many centuries, grow into the roaring fire of the Reconquista, the Christian reconquest of Iberia. The nascent kingdom of Asturias, born from this defiance, becomes a tiny Christian foothold in a largely Islamic peninsula. It is a precarious existence, often threatened, but it endures. From this small seed, other Christian principalities and kingdoms will gradually emerge and expand in the north: Navarre, Aragon, Castile, and Portugal. The invaders had successfully conquered vast swathes of land, but they had failed to extinguish these pockets of resistance. The failure to completely subjugate these northern territories is crucial. These mountainous redoubts become the wellspring of a counter-offensive that will define Iberian history for the next 700 years. The border between Christian and Muslim Spain becomes a fluid, often violent frontier, a land of raids and counter-raids, of shifting alliances and relentless pressure. The internal dynamics of Al-Andalus itself also play a role. Periods of unity and strength are often followed by fragmentation and civil strife, distracting from the complete pacification of the north and offering opportunities for the Christian kingdoms to consolidate and expand. The sheer effort required to maintain control over such a vast and diverse territory, while also fending off internal rivals and external threats, is immense. Thus, while the initial Muslim invasion of 711 was spectacularly successful in its early phases, its ultimate goal, the total conquest of the Iberian Peninsula, remained unfulfilled. The mountains of the north became a bastion, a shield behind which a different future for Iberia began to be forged. The no spoken at Covadonga, however small its initial echo, would reverberate down the ages. The legacy of Al-Andalus is undeniable, a rich cultural inheritance that profoundly shaped Spain. Yet the story of this era is also one of incomplete conquest, of a resistance that, though initially small and isolated, possessed an extraordinary tenacity. The northern kingdoms, clinging to their faith and their independence, ensured that the narrative of Iberia would not be monolithic. The attempt to absorb the entirety of the peninsula into the Islamic world faltered against the granite will of these northern peoples and the formidable geography they inhabited. This failure to achieve total dominion set the stage for centuries of complex interaction, conflict, and ultimately, the eventual emergence of the Spain we know today, a nation shaped by both the conquerors and the unconquered. The sagas of the Armada, the Peninsular War, and the nascent Reconquista are more than just chapters in Spain's long and storied past. They are powerful testaments to the extraordinary resilience that can be found when a people are united by a common purpose, defending their lands, their way of life, their very identity. Each of these episodes, though vastly different in context and character, reveals a core of indomitable spirit that refused to be extinguished by overwhelming force. From the storm-lashed decks of sinking galleons to the blood-soaked streets of Madrid and the defiant mountain strongholds of Asturias, we see a pattern emerge. It is a pattern of courage in the face of adversity, of ingenuity born from desperation, and of an enduring connection to the very soil of Iberia. Estas invasiones fallidas subrayan la magnitud y el poder que tenía la antigua España. Como dijo Napoleón Bonaparte, España es un gigante dormido. Cuando despierte el mundo temblará. Indeed, these moments of profound crisis often serve to awaken that sleeping giant, forging a stronger, more unified sense of what it meant to be Spanish. The echoes of these past struggles continue to resonate, a reminder that freedom is seldom freely given, but often hard-won, and that the human capacity for resistance, for saying no in the face of tyranny or overwhelming odds, is a force that can, and often does, change the course of history. Thank you for joining me on this journey.